meeting. We're doing the best we can. All right. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Stephanie Benvenuto, the chair of the San Diego Housing Commission Board of Commissioners. It is 1:01 on January 14th, 2021, and I'm calling to order the special meeting of our board. The process we're using for today's meeting is authorized by Governor Gavin Newsom's Executive Order N-2920, which he issued on March 17th to address the COVID-19 public health emergency. This meeting is occurring by video conference with all of our board members, with quorum. No, never mind. President and CEO, Housing Commission staff, General Counsel, all participating by video. For the record, I'm going to ask every board member to indicate their presence when I say their name. Vice Chair Ryan Klumpner.
Here.
Commissioner Akers.
I am here.
Commissioner Davis.
Here.
Commissioner Hester. Commissioner Hubbard.
Here.
And Commissioner Mitchell.
Here.
Great, thank you. We have no members of the public in attendance. However, members of the public may watch the video conference and hear the audio of today's meeting, which is going to be streamed live online. The agenda for today's meeting included a link to the website for the Commission Board of Commissioners, where the public can access a live streaming for today's meeting. The public has been provided with an alternative opportunity to provide comments to the board through an online comment form, and a link to this form was also included on the agenda for today's meeting, which was posted on the website www.sdhc.org on Friday, January 8th. And the public comment form explained that comments about items on the agenda will be read into the record if they were submitted by 4 p.m. yesterday, January 13th. In addition, non-agenda public comments submitted by 8 a.m. will be read into the record. There were no non-agenda public comments submitted for today's meeting, FYI, but we'll go ahead and move into commissioner comments. Do we have any commissioner comments this afternoon?
None from me. Maggie.
Thank you, Commissioner Davis. I'm seeing heads shaking. Okay, we're going to chug right along with our report from the President and CEO. Mr. Gentry.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I do have a handful of reports I'd like to share with the board. And the first thing I'd like to do is thank you all for allowing us to move the board meeting from last Friday to today. As we indicated last week, we received a last-minute request from the city to produce a recommendation from you all for housing authority action that we were not going to be able to turn around as early as last Friday. And since we had what we thought would be a fairly short meeting Friday, moving it to now and having two short meetings in one made a lot of sense. So thank you very much for your allowing us to change the date. It meant a lot for staff. I've got about a half a dozen short reports. The first one, bear with me for a minute because it'll take me a minute to describe this one. It's not often an organization gets a change in federal law. And we've done that. This agency did. We had some support, but we were the leader in getting a major change in the law having to do with the VASH voucher program. That's the VASH. And what that is the Veterans Administration Supportive Housing program, which provides for the VA and HUD to work together to provide supportive housing vouchers to homeless veterans. That program had become a hindrance to us here in dealing with some of our homelessness problems. As those of you who were around will remember, when we produced the city's strategic plan on homelessness in October of 2019, the only corrective measure, the only negative that came out of that report was that the VASH voucher program was not working well. And we had a number of unused vouchers in that program at the time. And there was one of those things where it was nobody's fault, but it was a structural issue having to do with the design of the law that administered the program, wherein we had to wait for a medical evaluation and a referral from the VA, from the Veterans Administration, before we could issue a voucher and the corresponding support to particular homeless vets. And the bureaucracy had gotten out of hand and it just wasn't working very well. We began advocating in DC to change that law in late 2019. Last early last year, I prepared some presentation for a congressional committee chaired by Congressperson Levin up the coast here. It was delivered in March. Actually, Congressman Peters delivered those comments for me because by the time we got to that committee meeting, the COVID mess was beginning to happen, and I opted not to travel to DC. But with the help with Congressman Peters in particular, Congressman Levin in particular, and with the appropriate work done by staff here, we were able to get the law changed. And it came through the as part of the Consolidated Appropriations Bill for 2021, which the president signed into law 2 weeks ago. So we don't have the changes in effect just yet. They've got to go through the appropriate regulation writing channels. But I wanted to share with you that this agency actually got a piece of federal legislation changed, and we did it with help, but with us as the lead. And I'm particularly proud of this organization in doing so. There were a lot of people who had a input into this, including Jeff Davis, Suket Dayal, Lisa Jones, Asusena Valladolid, and others. But the fact that we were able to get a law changed, I think reflects well on us, and it was the right thing to do. And it will be effective not only for us, but also for the entire country once the regulations are produced. Second thing I'd like to share with you also is of national import, potentially. And that is, I shared with you all earlier this month a collaborative policy paper put together by the Moving to Work Collaborative. And just as a reminder, the San Diego Housing Commission is one of only 39 moving to work agencies across the country. This effort has spent, for some of the agencies, up to the last 20 years working on reforms, revisions to current federal housing policy. We've been a member of this group going back to 2009. The collaborative includes me as the vice chair. Chair is my counterpart in Seattle. I'm the vice chair, and we spend a good bit of time advocating in Washington for changes to the industry to reflect what we've learned in our experimental programs over the past 10 to 20 years. And I commend this paper to you. We were able to get it produced the week just before Christmas. We supplied it to the Biden-Harris transition team. We provided copies of this to our senators and congressional delegation, as well as city leaders here in town as well. And if you have, I would encourage you to read it. It's fairly short. And it's comprehensible mainly because of the fine work done by Scott Marshall, who, although the rest of us had a lot of input into it, did the actual scholarship on the writing itself. So for Scott, thank you. And again, I would commend that paper to you all. It's a good example of national leadership on the part of this organization. Two other notes that are particularly worthy at this point. One is that the two hotels that we were involved in acquiring through the latter half of last year are done. We closed on the two hotels, one on Hotel Circle and one in Kearney Mesa on November the 25th. These properties will provide some 332 permanent affordable rental housing units for individuals who have experienced homelessness. Because of the number of the units are 2-bedroom units, we will be occupying these units with almost 400 different individuals. These residents began moving into these homes on these sites on December the 11th. As of today, 230 households that previously were homeless are now living in rental homes of their own. And we look forward to welcoming the remaining residents over the coming weeks. Most of these residents came from Operation Shelter to Home, which I'll mention again in just a minute, which includes the temporary shelter at the San Diego Convention Center. We've also provided federal rental assistance vouchers to help these residents pay their rent in these properties. One property, as you may well remember, is being managed by Father Joe's Villages. The other is being managed by PATH, or People Assisting the Homeless. And the funding for this program, which came out of Operation Home Key at the state, includes not only the state's Home Key program, but Housing Commission funding, City of San Diego funding, and a considerable loan at a great rate from Chase Bank. And the combination of those funds made the purchase of these hotels possible. And I would encourage you, as you have time, if you'd like to visit the hotels, let us know. We'd love to show you the example of this work. I mentioned to you a minute ago, Operation Shelter to Home. On December the 18th, Mayor Todd Gloria announced that Operation Shelter to Home, which is the convention center used for homelessness purposes, will continue through the end of January. And funding for this extension came from state grants for homelessness programs and cost savings from operations in November and December. The mayor will also be proposing, in fact, he did it as addressed last night, that the Operation Shelter to Home will be extended through the end of March this year. And you'll hear more later in today's meeting about our recommendations to provide and assist in the funding to support this extension. Since it was launched on April the 1st, 2020, Operation Shelter to Home has helped more than 1,100 individuals and 43 families obtain permanent or longer-term housing. I'll point out that Operation Shelter to Home is a collaborative initiative that includes the City of San Diego, the County of San Diego, the Housing Commission, the Regional Task Force on the Homeless, the San Diego Convention Center, Alpha Project, and Father Joe's Villages. And it has been a silver lining in the COVID cloud that shut down the ordinary use of that convention center last year. And we would not have been able to get near to that number of folks off the streets without the convention center as a focus for our efforts last year. Also, a point of good news is that the Housing Commission in December received an award of an additional 100 units of rental housing vouchers under HUD's mainstream voucher program. This adds to our 16,000 plus vouchers that we currently administer, and is one of those examples where every little bit helps. These vouchers will help pay rent for households for adults with disabilities between the ages of 18 and 61. These are families with low income or experiencing homelessness, and again, they're for families who have disabilities among adults age 18 to 61, and are in addition to two previous allocations under the mainstream program, which had previously given us 108 vouchers for the same purpose. Finally, Madam Chair, one final note, and that is a national award that the Housing Commission was notified that we received back in November. And most of you know what NAHRO is, NAHRO. It's the National Association of Housing and Redevelopment Officials, which is our largest professional association. We would have had the opportunity to go to a conference or two last year had the COVID thing not happened. This is a group that has a membership of over 20,000 individuals and organizations nationwide. I was privileged to be president of this group in the mid-1990s, from 1995 to 1997. And NAHRO awards a number of awards of excellence each year. This year, there were 21 awards given. And the Housing Commission was notified in November that we received one of these awards of excellence. And it was for our rehabilitation of the New Palace Hotel. It received an award of excellence for the work that we did in rehabilitating that property. The New Palace Hotel provides 79 affordable studio apartments for seniors who experience homelessness or have been at risk of homelessness. I'll point out this was the first major renovation of this property in approximately 25 years. We've also attached some 79 rental housing vouchers to the New Palace Hotel to help residents there pay their rent. The New Palace also receives supportive services from the nonprofit organization serving seniors. And the NAHRO, I'll point out the NAHRO Awards of Excellence, including this one, recognize, quote, outstanding innovation and achievement in housing and community development programs throughout the country. I'll point out that the new Palace acquisition and rehab program was run by Mike Pavko, who is our Senior VP of Real Estate, and is a good example of our best work. And ma'am, I appreciate the time, but it's been a while since the last board meeting, and I wanted to recognize each one of these accomplishments to the board. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gentry. It's always nice to have a list of good news amidst the COVID thing, as I think you called it, much to my entertainment. Next up is the approval of the minutes from
Madam Chair.
Yep.
Madam Chair. I had a question for Mr. Gentry before as part of his report. One of the things that you talked about on moving people into the apartments, which was again a great day for the commission, is we're having this conversation about the rollout of the vaccination. I've been in several meetings over the last 2 weeks, and for those for instance, I'm on the Sharp Hospital Board of Directors. And one of the things I've wondered is, has the county contacted you, because we have a number of residents who meet the criteria for receiving the vaccination in phase 1A, and are we coordinating with the county closely to make sure that the residents of the properties that the Housing Commission controls are indeed being made easier to access the vaccinations? And one of the things I thought about was the apartment complexes, is that you probably have a number of people in both that when they're fully occupied that would be eligible quickly. And so are you having conversations with the county about this?
Yeah, if I could ask Jeff Davis. Jeff, could you talk about the outreach we've done to the county and the dialogue we're seeking to set up with them now, sir?
Certainly, I might actually turn it over to Lisa Jones, who actually had
Great.
the conversation. Lisa?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're very fortunate to have direct contacts because of our participation in Operation Shelter to Home with the sort of guiding board and team that is determining how and when vaccines are pushed out, and then how they're creating access to that resource. So we reached out to them. We let them know we had a number of housing communities throughout the city, that they were different configurations, different parking spaces, different opportunities for community rooms, that we wanted to work with them to see how we could potentially use those sites as vaccination sites, not only for our residents to make sure that they're getting vaccinated quickly, but also potentially for other folks in the neighborhood, that sites that are maybe a little more accessible than some of the large mega sites that have really long wait times. So we've reached out to them, and they're working through their internal process to come back to us on what next steps might be.
Okay, thank you. That's good to hear. I just want to make sure that you guys are doing a fantastic job of caring for a population that in many instances doesn't have a medical home, and where we can be more efficient with getting the rollout and helping the county. We seem to be a great partner, so it's good to hear.
Mr. Mitchell, that's great, great question. And I'll point out that from what I know about the rollout of the vaccine, it's mainly media and a little more than that. The vaccine is being administered now to essential frontline workers and to those who are most vulnerable in nursing home or congregate care type facilities. And the next iteration will be what affects a number of us, and that'll be those 65 and older. And we do have some larger developments there where there might be a more immediate or quicker term contact. And after that, we're waiting to see how it's going to be rolled out. So we're going to be in line and collaborating as best we can.
Yep, you're right. And my understanding is 65 and older is coming quickly. So yeah, making sure we identify our sites for the county immediately, I think should be a priority.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
It's a great point, Commissioner. I certainly don't envy the county in trying to figure out the logistics of all of this. They are going to have a serious demand and supply issue, but we'll be moving on to the minutes from approval of the minutes from the special meeting of November 13th, 2020, and no public comments were submitted regarding these minutes. Do we have a motion?
Move to approve.
Thank you, Commissioner Davis. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Vice Chair Klumpner. We'll go ahead and vote via roll call per usual. Vice Chair Klumpner.
Aye.
Commissioner Akers,
Aye.
Commissioner Davis,
Aye.
Commissioner Hubbard,
Aye.
and Commissioner Mitchell.
Aye.
Wonderful, thank you. Passes unanimously. I will also add my aye vote to that. This morning, or this afternoon, gosh, I'm sorry. I would like to propose that item 100 be placed on consent. That is the lease agreement for the City of San Diego Family Justice Center at the Smart Corner building. There were no public comments submitted. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Thank
Second.
you. Was that Commissioner Hubbard?
Yes.
Thank you. All right, we'll go ahead and roll call. Vice Chair Klupner,
Aye.
Commissioner Akers, we'll get back to you. Commissioner Davis,
Aye.
Commissioner Hubbard,
Aye.
Commissioner Mitchell.
Aye.
I'll also add my vote in favor. Commissioner Akers, would you like to vote on that? Okay. Motion carries
I
with all
think he's
those.
frozen for some reason. That's why he's not. He may be logging back in.
Oh.
Yes.
There you go.
Whatever I missed, yes.
Commissioner Mitchell's looking out for you. Don't worry. All right. Our consent item
Mitch. Thank you.
passes with all commissioners voting in favor. We're going to proceed with our action items on the agenda today. The PowerPoint presentations were emailed to the commissioners yesterday, January 13th. They're posted on the Housing Commission's website as well. Our first item, 101, is the preliminary bond authorization for the Three Roots development. We had no public comments, and we'll be hearing from the Commission's Vice President of Multifamily Housing Finance, Colin Miller. Colin, whenever you're ready.
Good afternoon. Thank you. Waiting for the PowerPoint to pop up. So the item before you today is a request to take the initial steps to issue multifamily housing revenue bonds for the acquisition and construction of the Three Roots apartments. And still waiting for the PowerPoint to pop up. So
We did have it emailed. If we don't get it,
okay.
I'm not sure if that has any issue with the streaming. Maybe Chuck can weigh in on that. Okay. Well, there you go. I was hoping you were going to have to do some sort of weird vamping. You've been spared.
Sounds good. Next slide, please. So the Three Roots apartments, this is a proposed new construction of 178 affordable rental housing units and 2 unrestricted managers units at 9900 Camino Santa Fe in Mira Mesa for individuals and families with incomes ranging from 30 to 60% of area median income. And these will be in 3 separate 3-story elevator equipped buildings. Now, this development is located at the southern end of the Lennar Homes master plan community, which will have approximately 1,800 units in total when completed. So the developer of the project, next slide, please. The developer of the project is the Chelsea Investment Corporation. They are an experienced local for-profit developer with which the Housing Commission has multiple active loans that are in compliance. The general contractor is Emerson Construction, and the property manager will be Con-Am Management. The lender and investor will be selected prior to final bond authorization. Next slide, please. So this slide shows the site map of the development. It's located in the former Hanson Quarry, which is about a 413-acre site. In total, when the master plan community is completed, it will feature more than 160,000 square foot retail and commercial development in their mixed-use central area that they are calling the Roots Collective. The community's mobility hub will have ride-share parking spaces, meeting spots for private shuttles and on-demand transportation, as well as bike repair, lockers, and connections to the planned bus rapid transit system on Carroll Canyon Road. Next slide, please. So here the aerial map depicts the Three Roots apartment site, as well as the areas for the Three Roots master plan community. This will be a new neighborhood in the western Mira Mesa area near Sereno Valley. It will have the 1,800 homes I mentioned, as well as a 23-acre public park. And this area is the area shown in light brown on the slide. Specifically, the site is bounded by Camino Santa Fe to the west, which is where you'll see that little red marker. and Rattlesnake Canyon and a single-family home neighborhood to the north, with an industrial park to the south. The eastern boundary is formed by Carroll Canyon Road, the Carroll Canyon Business Park, and an active rock quarry. Next slide, please. Here in the site plan, this depicts the 3 separate buildings that will contain 24 one-bedroom units that will be 520 square feet, 79 two-bedroom units that will be 750 square feet, and 77 three-bedroom units that will be approximately 1,000 square feet. Now, these units will be dispersed among the 3 three-story buildings. The total 178 affordable units will remain affordable at AMIs from 30 to 60% for the next 55 years. The units will have amenities such as Energy Star rated appliances, dual glazed windows, low energy lighting systems, and as well as private patios and balconies with storage closets. All of the ground units will be accessible in accordance with the Americans with Disability Act, and the required number of units that will have accessible bathrooms and wheelchair barrier-free shower stalls. Also on the property will be a community building that includes the leasing office, a community area with kitchenette, and computer room. Next slide, please. So this development will be built with a Greenpoint Gold rated standard and will comply with the California Taxpayer Allocation Committee's minimum energy efficiency construction standards for new construction. The roof design is focused on maximizing square footage for the installation of a solar photovoltaic system. This system is intended to offset the house load that will include all or part of the domestic hot water. Next slide, please. The total development cost of this project will be approximately $89 million, which averages out to around $496,000 per unit. Sources of funding include a permanent loan, tax credit equity, state tax credit equity, a junior C bond, a master developer land donation, residual receipt loan interest, deferred developer fee, and a seller note. I'd like to take a moment to point out that no Housing Commission loan funds will be used for these new affordable housing units. And when you look at this slide, this is a prime example of the multi-layered capital stack that's usually needed to fund affordable housing developments, or as you may have heard Mr. Gentry call it, lasagna financing. Next slide, please. The units, as I mentioned before, will be restricted at incomes at 30 to 60% of area median income for the next 55 years, and rents will range from $649 per month up to $1,800 per month for the 1 through 3 bedroom units. Eligible households and individuals will have incomes ranging from $46,200 to $69,300 based on the 2020 rent and income chart. Next slide, please. Pending your approval today and the subsequent Housing Authority approval on the 26th, SDLAC for bonds on February 4th. We would bring this item back for final bond-related approvals after the project receives an allocation of bonds. Now, the developer currently plans to start construction no later than December of 2021 and complete construction in June of 2023, should all these milestones be met. Next slide, please. So the developer is requesting a proposed bond issuance of up to $58 million in tax-exempt multifamily housing revenue bonds and up to $4.8 million in taxable bonds. Now, the issuance will be pursuant to the Housing Commission's bond policy, and this bond issuance will not create any sort of financial liability to the Housing Commission, Housing Authority, nor the city. Neither the full faith and credit nor taxing power of the city nor full faith and credit of the Housing Authority will be pledged to the payment of the bonds. Next slide, please. Recommend that the Housing Authority approve the initial steps to issue a bond inducement resolution for up to $58 million in tax-exempt multifamily housing revenue bonds and $4.8 million in taxable bonds. Authorize an application and subsequent applications if necessary to SDLAC, and approve the financing team of ORIC as bond counsel and Ross Financial as the financial advisor. Further, we would ask that the EO or designee to execute necessary documents in a form approved by General Counsel and take necessary actions upon the advice of General Counsel and or bond counsel. Next slide, please. Lastly, that the Housing Commission recommend that the City Council hold a Equity and Responsibility Act public hearing and adopt a resolution approving the issuance of up to $58 million in tax-exempt multifamily housing revenue bonds for the development of 3 routes. Next slide, please. Appreciate your time. This concludes my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have about the project.
Yeah, Commissioner Mitchell.
I just had a question before we get on the project, but I did have a question. There's so much focus now on whether we are indeed making progress, Colin, on as it relates to the housing stock and the growth. I'm always reminded by when I look back at the governor's pronouncement that he wanted to build 172,000, he wants us to build 172,000 units of housing in San Diego, and he didn't break it into categories. But is there some way we can create a measure before we have these discussions at each meeting that shows that we're adding to the stock? You know, I think this one's for 178 units. I think there's one later on presentations for 155 units. You know, it's important that we be incredibly transparent so that the public sees we are indeed moving forward and we're adding units. But right now it's kind of you know, for us as commissioners, you bring these presentations, we see 178, 150, you know, there's one that's a remodel or a rehab. But I do think the new construction units are important for the conversation. And is there a way to create a barometer that we can always have, that we see before as part of these packets that says, listen, today, before you approve anything, we're starting at, you know, 4,753 units and we're adding to it, you know, upon approval today? Because I do think that's an important number from a public perception standpoint.
Yeah, absent any comments from anyone else, we absolutely have the ability to bring that data forward to you before these meetings. We track that internally. Sure.
Okay. Yeah, I just think it's important for us as commissioners to know that, I mean, I know that everything comes with like a 25-year timeline, and you know, but we're not losing stock, so we are moving forward. And ultimately, it would be nice to know where we started beginning of 2019, where we ended, or 2020, where we ended at the end of 2020, where we're starting today. And you know, because I that number matters. What we've been asked to do is make sure that we're moving forward, moving this discussion forward, and housing is the number one issue with the new mayor. Obviously, you know, he mentioned he's going to continue to talk about it, and I think it's the time that the public wants to know that, okay, well, how much are you doing every year? So that's my request.
And if I could add to that, the short answer is yes, sir, we will, as Colin just said. The nuances to it is that we can report on what we produce, and we can coordinate with the city to get information from them on what gets produced beyond our capacity. And the private sector market stuff will be another measure, but that would be a great metric to have.
Yeah, I'm not as worried about the private sector marker. I am really, I would like to know more, and I'd like for us to be more proud of what we're approving, and that shows we are indeed moving the needle forward. And I don't think we do that very well now. And you know, Mr. Gentry, you and I've talked about this. Is the organization is doing great work, but it's lost in the overall discussion of housing, because the overall discussion of housing is we're not moving fast enough. So,
yes, sir, we'll do it.
Thank you. Do we have any other questions, comments regarding this project? I don't think I see any. I've been familiar with Three Roots since it was in its, you know, much earlier planning phase. Glad to see this component coming along. This is wonderful. Obviously, I'm a big fan of these bigger units as well. I think that's super important for our families and, you know, larger groups of folks that are looking to remain together as they apply for affordable units. Do we have a motion to approve the project then, or?
So moved.
Thank you, Commissioner Mitchell.
Commissioner Davis.
Thank you, Commissioner Davis. We'll go ahead and vote. Vice Chair Klumpner.
Aye.
Commissioner Akers.
Yes.
Commissioner Davis.
Aye.
Commissioner Hubbard.
Aye.
Commissioner Mitchell.
Aye.
And I am pleased to add my vote in favor as well. So motion carries unanimously. Thank you, everybody. Our next item 102 is another preliminary bond authorization, this time for Bandar Salam Apartments. Again, no public comments, but our housing programs manager, Kwafi Reed, will be presenting this item whenever you're ready.
Good afternoon, everybody. The item before you today is a request to take the initial steps to issue tax-exempt multifamily housing revenue bonds for the rehabilitation of Bandar Salam Apartments. Next slide, please. And the proposed project is the rehabilitation of an existing 68-unit affordable housing rental development located at 3810 Winona Avenue within Council District 9. The existing structure contains 16 one-bedrooms, 31 two-bedrooms, 16 three-bedrooms, 2 four-bedrooms, two two 5-bedroom affordable units and one unrestricted manager's unit. All 67 units will remain affordable at 45 to 50% AMI for 55 years. The subject renovation will devote over $76,000 in construction costs per unit to the improvement of the complex. The current scope of work includes replacement of all building roofs, installation of replacement bathtubs, cabinets, and Energy Star refrigerators and dual pane windows. The developer also plans to expand the number of ADA compliant apartments, improve ADA paths of travel, and install additional ADA compliant parking spaces. Next slide, please. Oh, I haven't been asking for the next slide. Sorry. We're at slide 3 here. My apologies. So sorry. All right, so we should be on slide 4. The developer is Community Housing Works. CHW is a local award-winning nonprofit affordable housing developer that has been awarded loans from San Diego Housing Commission in the past and is currently in full compliance with all San Diego Housing Commission loans. The general contractor for the project will be Sun Country Builders, and the property manager will be Con Ed Management. The other members of the development team are listed on the slide. Next slide, please. This slide shows Bandar Salam's location relative to its surrounding neighborhood. The project is located a block south of University Avenue and 4 blocks west of 54th Street. Nearby amenities include 2 grocery stores, Colina del Sol Park, and nearby elementary and high schools. Next slide, please. This slide over the corner of Winona Avenue and Whiteman Street. This slide also provides an excellent view of the photovoltaics on the roof. Next slide, please. This slide shows the side profile of one of the structures that makes up the complex. Next slide, please. This slide shows some exterior shots of the development parking area and the courtyards. Next slide, please. This slide shows some of the typical unit interiors, community, and laundry areas. Next slide, please. The total development cost of the project will be approximately $22 million, which comes to approximately $328,000 per unit. As part of the financing plan, Community Housing Works proposes to partially repay the outstanding interest and existing loan for the San Diego Housing Commission loan and extend the repayment of the remaining principal to a term matching the period of affordability at the property. Next slide, please. Units will be restricted at 45% to 45% to 45% and 50% of the area median income for 55 years. Rents will range from $1,134 to $1,541 per month for all of the 2, 3, 4, and 5 bedroom affordable units. Eligible households and individuals will have a max income from $36,405 to $67,000 based on the 2020 rent and income chart. Next slide, please. Pardon me, folks. Thanks for your patience. Should this be approved today, this will be presented at the Housing Authority and City Council on the 26th. Should the developer receive an award of bonds, we anticipate bringing this item back for final bond approvals in April 21. The developer expects to close financing May 2021 and complete renovations approximately January 2023. Next slide, please. To summarize the developer's request, you are considering approvals to take the preliminary steps to issue up to $13.5 million in tax-exempt multifamily housing revenue bonds. Approval of the bond issuance and tougher resolutions does not commit the housing authority to issue bonds. The bonds would not constitute a debt to the city. If the bonds are ultimately issued for the project, the bonds will not financially obligate the city, the housing authority, or the housing commission, because security for the repayment of the bonds will be limited to the specific private revenue of the project. Next slide, please. Staff requests that the Housing Commission approve the partial paydown of the existing San Diego Housing Commission loan and extend its term to 2076, and recommends that the Housing Commission recommends that the Housing Authority issue a bond inducement resolution of up to $13.5 million in tax-exempt multi-family housing revenue bonds, authorize an application and subsequent application if necessary to SDLAC, and approve a bond financing team of Quint Thimig as bond counsel and CSG advisors as bond financial advisor. Next slide, please. Staff further requests that the Housing Commission authorize the San Diego Housing Commission's president and chief executive officer or designee to execute documents in a form approved by the general counsel and take necessary actions upon take necessary actions upon advice of general counsel, and recommend that the City of San Diego City Council hold a Tax Equity Fiscal Responsibility Act public hearing and adopt a resolution approving issuance of the aforementioned bonds. Next slide, please. Thank you. That concludes my presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Reed. Do we have any questions? Anything that a commissioner would like to follow up on? If you wouldn't mind just kind of giving us a little bit more information on the dynamic of paying down part of the loan and then re-extending, I think that would be helpful for some of the commissioners just to understand that financial mechanism, if that's okay.
Sure.
Yes, I'll be happy to answer that question. So the proposal from Community Housing Works is that the existing Housing Commission loan, as part of the re-syndication, will have the interest that's accrued on the loan paid off. The principal of the loan and the term of that loan would then be continued for the remaining 55 years that line up with the tax credit program. So the idea is that the development is able to repay a portion of their loan to us. We're allowing them to roll that existing debt forward. This helps the property financially. SDLAC has recently increased the minimum construction amount per unit from $40,000 to $60,000. I see Mary Jane shaking her head. And so as a result, developers are forced to put more and more capital into these units, which is a good thing in the sense that you are taking care of certain building systems that may be at the end of their useful life or approaching the end of their useful life. So at the end of the day, CHW will have a better property and the residents will have a better place to call home. So this is something that we're able to do. It's not new money into the deal. And this is an advantage we have that we're able to do this and allow a project to be re-syndicated without having to put new money into the deal while also receiving a partial repayment of that loan. I hope that answered the question. If not, I can probably go deeper.
That does. I just wanted to highlight that since it's not something that typically comes before us, and sometimes this gets in the weeds, but it does sound like a really prudent way to move on a little bit better. I just want to make sure that the rest of the commissioners have that opportunity. Mr. Gentry.
And just add a note too that this reflects City Council priority last year to focus on preservation of existing affordable housing and extending its useful life. And as you can see from the cost, it's generally less expensive to extend than to produce. This is another good example, I think, of keeping something that's been in use for a time renewed and going forward.
Always impressed by the flexibility that the staff has been able to demonstrate in making these deals work out. So I think this is very on par with how the commission typically does things, especially with some of our longer term partners like Community Housing Works. So it's fantastic. Do we have a motion?
Moved.
We'll give it to Klepner. Can I put you down as our second, Commissioner Davis?
Second.
Great, fabulous. We'll go ahead and move into our roll call. Vice Chair Klepner.
Aye.
Commissioner Akers. I can't see.
He stepped away. He'll be back.
Okay. Commissioner Mitchell is the spokesperson. Commissioner Davis.
Aye.
Commissioner Hubbard.
Aye.
Commissioner Mitchell.
Aye.
Thank you. And I'm going to add my vote in favor as well. We'll allow Commissioner Akers to come back and vote at a later moment. That carries unanimously. Thank you, everybody. Moving into item 103, which is our preliminary bond authorization, the third of the day for Shoreline Apartments. Again, no public comments submitted, and we will be hearing from Vice President of Multifamily Housing Finance, Colin Miller. Colin, whenever you're ready.
Thank you. Good afternoon again. So the item before you today is a request to take the initial steps to issue multifamily housing revenue bonds for the acquisition and construction of Shoreline Apartments. Next slide, please. Shoreline Apartments is the proposed new construction of 153 affordable rental housing units and 2 unrestricted managers units at 4470 Alvarado Canyon Road in the Grantville neighborhood in Council District 7. These units will be for individuals and families with 30% to 80% of area median income in a 5-story elevator-equipped building with a subterranean parking garage. This property will replace an existing Metropolitan Transit System parking lot. I'd like to point out there are no Housing Commission loan funds in this development. Next slide, please. The developer of the project is Affirmed Housing Group, an experienced local for-profit developer with which the Housing Commission has multiple active loans that are in compliance. The property management company will be Solari, and tenant services will be provided by Compass for Affordable Housing. The general contractor, lender, and tax credit investor will be selected prior to final bond authorization. Next slide, please. Here in this slide, we have a site map of the development, which will be located on the 1.06 acre parcel at the center of the Greystar Master Plan community to be developed in the Grantville community. This master plan community is adjacent to the Grantville trolley station along Alvarado Canyon Road. Some nearby amenities include not 1, but 2 Kaiser Permanente medical centers and a grocery outlet. As you can see on the slide, the red dot is the location of the project. Next slide, please. This aerial map depicts the Shoreline Apartment site as well as the areas for the Greystar Master Plan community. Specifically, the site is bounded by the Grantville trolley station to the southeast, mixed-use commercial to the north, and an existing affirmed affordable permanent supportive housing development, the Zephyr, which the Housing Commission funded and provided 82 project-based vouchers to the south. To the west, there are several small businesses along Mission Gorge Road. The building is set on the western half of the current MTS parking lot. An unaffiliated developer, Greystar, proposes to construct a market rate project geared towards students on the eastern portion of the site. The 2 buildings are centered on the MTS lots to create numerous bike and pedestrian paths through and around the buildings, forming routes of connection between the trolley and bus station to the south or southeast and the Alvarado Creek area that encompasses the site to the north and west. The project will enter into a 99-year ground lease with MTS upon the closing of construction financing for the project. Next slide, please. The ground level of the building will include residential units, parking and bike storage, staff offices, and an assembly and entertainment area with outdoor patios. The upper levels contain the residential units, a laundry room, and an expansive 5,800 square foot podium level courtyard. Amenities include shaded outdoor gathering spaces with built-in seating and planters, play areas, and a community barbecue. Next slide, please. The site plan shown here depicts the building's footprint, as well as some of the other amenities. For example, on the left-hand side of the slide, you'll notice the shaded outdoor gathering space with the built-in seating and planters that I mentioned earlier, play areas, barbecue station, etc. Also, on the bottom portion of the slide, you'll notice the service parking that's planned next to the subterranean parking below the building. Next slide, please. The total development cost of the project is anticipated to be $63.8 million, which comes out to approximately $411,000 per unit. Sources of funding include a permanent loan, tax credit equity, state tax credit equity, a loan from the State Housing and Community Development Department, and deferred developer fee. I'd like to reiterate that there are no Housing Commission loan funds used for the creation of these new affordable units. Next slide, please. The units will be restricted at 30 to 80% of area median income for the next 55 years. Rents will range from $785 to $2,869 per month for the 1 through 3 bedroom units. Please note this chart lists the Section 8 rents as this development was awarded 25 project-based vouchers from the Housing Commission. Future residents with Section 8 vouchers will only pay a portion of their income for those subsidized units. Eligible households and individuals will have incomes ranging from $0 to $92,400 based on the 2020 rent and income chart. Again, these are larger units. Next slide, please. Pending your approval today and the Housing Authority approval on the 26th, the developer plans to apply to SDLAC on February 4th. We will bring this item back for final bond-related approvals after the project receives an allocation of bonds. The developer currently plans to start construction no later than September of 2021 and complete construction May of 2023. Next slide, please. Is requesting a proposed bond issuance of up to $36.5 million in tax-exempt multifamily housing revenue bonds and up to $20.1 million in taxable bonds. The issuance of these bonds will be pursuant to the Housing Commission's bond policy. Any bond issuance would not create a financial liability of the Housing Commission, Housing Authority, nor the city. Neither the full faith and credit nor taxing power of the city nor full faith and credit of the Housing Authority will be pledged to the payment of the bonds. Next slide, please. Staff is requesting that the Housing Commission recommend that the Housing Authority approve the initial steps to issue a bond inducement resolution for up to $36.5 million in tax-exempt multifamily housing revenue bonds and $20.1 in taxable bonds, authorize an application and subsequent applications if necessary to SDLAC, and approve the financing team of ORIC as bond counsel and Ross Financial as the financial advisor. Further, to authorize the Housing Commission's president and CEO or designee to execute necessary documents in the form of approved upon the advice of general counsel and or bond counsel. Next slide, please. Lastly, that the Housing Commission recommend that the City Council hold a Tax Equity and Fiscal Responsibility Act public hearing and adopt a resolution approving the issuance of up to $36.5 million in multifamily housing revenue bonds. Next slide. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it. This concludes the presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. Also, there are representatives from the developer who can answer anything as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. Do we have any questions or comments from the commissioners?
Madam Chair, question, I was looking through this column. You know, there was always a lot of talk about SB 375, and when you build long transit routes and trolley and you connect transit, there's state money available. I'm assuming that those funds are no longer available. Is that correct?
So I'm not sure about that Senate bill. I do know that this project has received transit-oriented development funds from HCD in the amount of $10 million. So for new projects, I'm not sure, but this one has definitely received TOD funds from Housing and Community Development.
I just was asking that. I think one of the things is we were looking at how we build all the housing stock we need, you know, or any of the state sources that have been touted, you know, previously, and, you know, especially encouraging those constructions projects that are adjacent to transit routes, if those are still in existence. If you guys do some research and let me know, I'd appreciate it. And then second thing is, sure, this is a great project. You know, this, when I read the information about this project and saw the renderings, there's so much, you know, scrutiny that goes in when somebody says they're building affordable housing. You know, all the conspiracy theorists come out and say, well, you know, what's it going to look like? This project is beautiful. We've seen a few in the last several meetings that are truly, you know, amazing additions to any skyline or neighborhood. And you know, Rick, at some point, you guys have to, you know, create your own video that shows the new projects and post it online, so that when all the naysayers talk about why I can't have affordable housing because it's going to, you know, bring down property values, you know, you see what these projects actually look like, and how they're being designed with providing not just a place to sleep, but a place to also to have recreation and to truly provide a space. So I love this project, and I love where it's being built, and I'm glad to hear about the MTS connection.
Yes, sir, we'll do so. I think it's a great idea, and thank you. I think this is a great reason we have commissioners to give us ideas that help do more business out there.
Well, just, any video you put online that shows the projects when they're completed, it provides an opportunity for anybody who's questioning a project. I just looked online. These actually, this isn't what I was thinking, but these are great. So
I'll point out that every one of the Housing Commission owned properties is Google mapped on our website too. And Jeff, maybe this is a good project for Scott to this year. Maybe we produce a video not only of what we own and operate ourselves, but of the third party properties as well. Now, let me point out for the newer board members in particular, these three properties this is the kind of work that does not always get a lot of attention given the nature of our business, but this is our bread and butter. This is what we do to help provide support to private sector players. And these are three of the best we work with. Chelsea Affirmed and Community Housing Works, two of them for-profit, one nonprofit. Although I'll point out nonprofit is not a business model, it's a tax status. They're all three are professional developers. And is spreading the work out among other players out there where we're the enabler, we're the wholesaler, if you would, and they do the retail work. But this has served this community very well over the years. And this is our bread and butter and it does not always get attention. So I think we'll do our best to increase our level of communication on this. Good idea, sir.
Okay, any other commissioner questions or comments? A quick question. Would you mind walking us through a little bit more, just briefly, on how we get to 80%? I think that's really critical that this project is able to move into a higher range of affordability for those folks that are particularly squeezed towards the middle.
Yeah, absolutely. I neglected to bring it up on this presentation. I've talked about it before. So on page 8 of the report, I'm not sure if you want to bring it up on the slideshow or not, but the unit mix is a range that is as low as 30% of AMI up to 80% of AMI. The reason that, historically, tax credit projects had a maximum allowable income of 60% of area median income. And the state agency, the California Tax Credit Allocation Committee, revised their rules and regulations that developers have to abide by to allow what they call income averaging. And so this will allow a property to have units at 30, 40, 50, 60, up to 80% of AMI, as long as the average AMI at the property is 60% or below. And so this is allowing developers like Affirmed to really serve a wider range of individuals. And so it's something that's relatively new. I think we've had probably four or five of these come through in the past few board meetings. But this is something that it helps the developer, it helps the community, and it was a good change for TCAC to put forward.
And Madam Chair, I'll also point out the fact that we move up a little bit higher to deal with the 80% of income folks has balanced by moving lower as well, which is addressing the very low income folks too. So it's just this good flexibility, which makes for good policy.
Completely agree. Well, with that, Commissioner, questions, comments, or do you have a motion?
So move.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Hubbard, a second by Commissioner Mitchell. We'll go ahead and roll call. Vice Chair Klempner.
Aye.
Commissioner Akers.
Aye. I got this one, Mitch.
Commissioner Davis.
Aye.
Commissioner Hubbard.
Aye.
And Commissioner Mitchell.
Aye.
Wonderful. I'll add my vote in favor as well, and that will carry unanimously. We are moving on to item 104, the authorization of an amendment to the Housing Commission's budget to utilize moving to work funds for the operator agreements for the city's bridge shelter programs. No public comments, but we will be hearing from Executive Vice President of Strategic Initiatives, Lisa Jones. Lisa, whenever you're ready.
Good afternoon. Thank you. I'll just give comms. There we go. Good afternoon, commissioners. This afternoon, I'm presenting a request to approve an amendment to the Housing Commission's fiscal year 2021 budget for the ongoing operations of the city's bridge shelters, which will support the city's extension of Operation Shelter to Home. Next slide. The Operation Shelter to Home initiative launched April 1st, 2020 in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. It provides adequate physical distancing to help prevent the spread of COVID-19 among people experiencing homelessness and focuses deeply on helping these individuals obtain permanent or longer-term housing. Initially, residents from the city's bridge shelters and some residents from the city's interim housing programs moved into the San Diego Convention Center, which was repurposed to serve as this temporary shelter. In addition, sheltered families with children moved into hotel rooms to allow for proper physical distancing. The County of San Diego provided the funding for these hotel rooms, and the Regional Task Force on the Homeless provided the funding for case management services. Then, city-funded outreach teams, the Neighborhood Policing Division's Homeless Outreach Team, and other outreach providers began identifying individuals experiencing unsheltered homelessness and offering opportunities to shelter and access critical resources at the convention center. The San Diego City Council's June 8, 2020 approval of the city's fiscal year 2021 budget included funding to continue Operation Shelter to Home through October 2020. In October, new Operation Shelter to Home through December 2020. On December 18, 2020, Mayor Todd Gloria announced the extension of Operation Shelter to Home through January 2021. Mayor Gloria directed city staff to use funds previously designated for shelter operations in November and December that remained unspent due to cost-saving measures and other factors. In addition, available state grant funding specifically for homelessness-related programs and services supported the extension. At Mayor Gloria's direction, city staff will be presenting separate action items to the City Council to further extend Operation Shelter to Home. Next slide. Shelter to Home has helped more than 1,100 individuals and more than 40 families with children obtain permanent or longer-term housing. This initiative is a collaboration among the City of San Diego, County of San Diego, the Housing Commission, the Regional Task Force on the Homeless, the San Diego Convention Center, and Homeless Villages and Alpha Project. Next slide. Operation Shelter to Home centralized shelter staff from the city's bridge shelter programs. Many of the shelter and services programs were experiencing staffing shortages in March 2020 due to the pandemic. Centralizing staff in one location put mitigation processes in place to help ensure client services were maintained even with interim reductions in staffing levels. Operation same services they received at the bridge shelters. These include case management, housing navigation, 24-hour security, meals, showers, restrooms, and laundry services. Additionally, the program provides access to personal protective supplies and resources to mitigate the spread of COVID-19. County public health nurses, county behavioral health services, and primary care services from other providers have been integrated into the shelter setting, and supportive services from a variety of organizations are available throughout the shelter site. Next slide. The Housing Commission administers the agreements for the operations of the city's bridge shelter programs through a memorandum of understanding with the city. On June 16, 2020, the Housing Authority and City Council authorized the MOU for fiscal year 2021 with 2 one-year options to renew. In addition, the Housing Authority authorized the Housing Commission to enter into agreements with Alpha Project, Father Joe's Villages, and Veterans Village of San Diego to operate the bridge shelters in fiscal year 2021. In October, the Housing Authority approved an amendment to the agreement with Father Joe's Villages to expand the capacity of the shelter they operate. This amendment allows the bridge shelter for families, single adults, and transitional age youth to serve 280 additional single adults. In November, the bridge shelter operated by Veterans Village of San Diego ended its operations. Due to ongoing housing efforts, a reduced number of veterans over time utilized the shelter at the convention center, and the sprung structure that had been the site of the veterans shelter that VBSD operated previously was transferred to the city of Chula Vista. This was part of former Mayor Kevin Faulkner's effort to increase the opportunity for shelter bed resources outside of the city of San Diego. City Council and Housing Authority actions on June 16, 2020 also included approval of an MOU with the Housing Commission to administer homeless housing assistance and prevention program funds. These are among the sources of funds for the operations of the city's bridge shelter programs. Next slide. The June 2020 approvals of the bridge shelter operating agreements also authorized the Housing Commission's president and CEO or designee to substitute sources of funds if they are available. The proposed action before you today would authorize the Housing Commission to spend $2 million in federal moving to work dollars or MTW funds for the bridge shelter operating agreements. These MTW funds would partially replace the Homeless Housing Assistance and Prevention Program or HAP funds previously allocated to the bridge shelters. This would provide the City of San Diego flexibility to use those HAP funds to support the continuation of Operation Shelter to Home at the San Diego Convention Center, or to replace Homeless Emergency Aid Program or HEAP funds and other programs, which would then make HEAP funds available for Operation Shelter to Home. The MTW funds are from Housing Commission resources that can support one-time investment in these programs. Next slide. Housing Commission staff are requesting that the board recommend that the Housing Authority of the City of San Diego take the following actions. Authorize the Housing Commission to amend its fiscal year 2021 budget in the amount of $2 million from MTW funds to fund the operator agreements with Father Joe's Villages and Alpha Project for the bridge shelter programs. These funds partially replace the HAP funds previously allocated to these programs. And authorize the Housing Commission's president and CEO or designee to execute any necessary documents in a form and format approved by General Counsel or take any actions necessary to implement these approvals. Next slide. That concludes my presentation. Our Chief Financial Officer, Tracy McDermott, and I are both available to answer any questions you may have.
Okay, commissioners, we've moved on from preliminary bond authorizations to budget amendments. This is a technical meeting today. Do we have any questions, comments? Nothing. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Okay, Commissioner Davis,
I'll second.
seconded by Commissioner Mitchell. All those, I'm sorry, just glanced at an email. We're going to go ahead and roll call like we always do. Vice Chair Klempner.
Aye.
Commissioner Akers.
Yes.
Commissioner Davis.
Aye.
Commissioner Hubbard.
Aye.
Commissioner Mitchell.
Aye.
And I will go ahead and add my vote in favor as well. That motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Lisa. We're going to go on to item 105, an informational workshop about the fiscal year 2022 moving to work annual plan. No public comments were submitted for this item, and we'll be hearing from Executive Vice President of Business Administration, Suket Dayal, and moving to work Program Administrator, Mary Angela Petruno. Whenever you're ready.
Good morning, Chair Benvenuto, Commissioners, Mr. Gentry, Mr. Christensen. I am Suket Dayal, Executive Vice President of Business Administration. And with me in Zoom land is Mary Angela Petruno, our Moving to Work Program Administrator. This afternoon, we're requesting your feedback on the Housing Commission's FY 2022 Moving to Work Annual Plan. Next slide, please. So I will start by providing an overview of the program, and Mary Angela will then share the two initiatives that we're proposing this year. As an MTW agency, we develop an annual plan that outlines the programs and initiatives that we will implement during the next fiscal year. Each year, we first present the plan as an informational item for your feedback, and then we will return next month as an action item for your approval. Next slide, please. The Housing Commission's Moving to Work status allows us to implement a variety of innovative initiatives. Now, as Mr. Gentry mentioned, we are one of only 39 housing authorities out of a total of 3,400 nationwide to have this designation. In 2015, Congress did direct HUD to expand the program to 100 new agencies. And the process right now is underway in selecting the first cohort of agencies. They've broken it down into 4 cohorts. MTW housing authorities, we like to consider ourselves America's housing policy lab. And many of the initiatives that we have implemented have been adopted by HUD to extend to all public housing agencies. Mr. Gentry mentioned our paper, and we're hoping for many more initiatives that have been proven by MTW agencies are then extended to other housing authorities, which include a whole variety of flexibility, streamlining, and cost effectiveness. Next slide, please. Now, these are the 3 main objectives by which we govern all of our initiatives that we propose. San Diego has earned a reputation as being an innovator. We continually strive to make this flexibility, to expand on the flexibility, to develop customized solutions to address our local issues. Let's take homelessness as an example. We were one of the first agencies nationwide to set up a sponsor-based subsidy program where we provide a housing subsidy, partner up with agencies that are able to provide services and provide a holistic solution for homelessness. We developed boutique programs like the Guardian Scholars Program with Commissioner Akers at San Diego State University that provides a housing subsidy for students. Now, these students are either formerly foster youths or formerly unaccompanied homeless students. At a very early stage, we recognized the need for affordable housing solutions and invested moving to work funds towards purchasing properties and to rehabilitate Housing Commission owned affordable housing to ensure long-term sustainability of these units. For our families, we established a landlord partnership program to make units available, more units available to rental assistance participants, recruit new landlords, and retain existing landlords. We look forward to our fiscal year 2022 initiatives also having a positive impact in San Diego. And with that, Mariangela will now share the details of these initiatives. Next slide, please.
So this year, we're proposing 2 new initiatives. These initiatives reflect the cornerstone of the Moving to Work program, which is the flexibility to determine localized programs that are most effective for each public housing authority specific community. The first initiative is flexible funding for supportive services, and the second is the use of Moving to Work funds to support the Housing Commission's first-time homebuyer program. These initiatives will allow the Housing Commission to use Moving to Work funds for these programs as needed, but will not require a specific Moving to Work investment each year. The authority to use Moving to Work funds for these programs will expand the Housing Commission's ability to determine the most effective use of limited available Moving to Work funds each year among a variety of programs necessary to help address San Diego's housing needs. Next slide. The goal of this supportive services initiative is to make program operations more efficient. The initiative will provide a centralized funding resource as a stopgap measure for supportive services for households with low income or that are experiencing homelessness. For example, we can provide centralized resources and points of contact for individuals and families receiving assistance from multiple programs. This would address a gap that the city, in the city's community action plan on homelessness. With this initiative, the Housing Commission also could provide short-term funding to bridge the gap in supportive services that otherwise may occur during the process of acquiring a property until the long-term services funding commences. In addition, the opportunity would be available to utilize Moving to Work funds to help families obtain services such as internet access, which is increasingly necessary for educational or work opportunities. These are just a few examples of the opportunities that could become available for consideration if this initiative is implemented. Next slide. The second initiative would allow the Housing Commission to direct Moving to Work funds to support the first-time homebuyer program as needed. The Housing Commission anticipates that Federal Home Investment Partnership Program, the State Cal Home Program, and the city's Inclusionary Housing Fund will continue to provide the essential funding each year that enables the first-time homebuyer program to help families achieve the dream of homeownership. In addition, mortgage credit certificates will remain an important resource for home buyers. You'll hear more about these in the next workshop this afternoon. However, if these funding sources are insufficient in a given year to meet the demand for the first-time home buyer program, the proposed Moving to Work initiative would allow the Housing Commission to invest Moving to Work funds to support these programs. Next slide. This concludes our presentation. The fiscal year 2022 Moving to Work annual plan is currently posted on the Housing Commission's website at www.sdhc.org for public comment, and details about how to participate in the January 19th public hearing about the plan is also available on the website. And now we are available for any questions or comments that you may have.
Great job, thank you. Commissioners, questions, comments, feedback?
I would just make one comment. I noticed that you had mentioned that you were going to try and use some money for internet connection. One of the things that we've discovered in the state and across the country is that the digital divide is alive and well and really problematic, more problematic than anybody ever envisioned, because just because you have a smartphone doesn't mean you can actually do your homework at home during COVID impacted environment. And so when I saw that, what came to mind was we at SDG&E, we funded several initiatives through the San Diego Foundation around addressing the digital divide. There may be a great opportunity. I don't know if the Housing Commission can, but where you can get funds matched. So let me start here. How big is the problem? Obviously, you put it in there. It's something you want to focus on. are you getting this request for support for addressing the digital divide at several of our properties?
I can answer that. So I do not have a finite answer to how big the problem is. But one thing that COVID did show us, and a good point that you mentioned, you may have a family that has a smartphone, and that smartphone is paid, there's other programs through which they got their smartphone, but now they have their kids that need learning. And if you're at home learning, all of a sudden you need a computer, you need internet access, you need other resources. So the problem, I think, is a lot bigger than what we might get stats for. But it is something which step one is let's have the internet access available, and then that can lead to other solutions as well.
So that leads to the second question. With the 2 apartment complexes that we're now moving families into, where you generally have lobby areas, things of that nature, are you thinking about solutions where the private sector might be willing to fund them because they might provide greater access, especially within where you have families with young children who need that internet access? I know the equipment's one piece, but the actual internet access itself is another. So have you looked at that as an option?
We're looking at all options, and one option is to provide the hardware capabilities, whether it's to fund just the lobby or it's to fund the units itself. We do have Beto online as our CIO and Emily as our property vice president if they want to add on to it.
I will say, Mitch, some of our permanent supportive housing locations, we have been able to provide that in the lobby area, the actual access. To Suket's point, the biggest initial challenge is the infrastructure. We need to get the infrastructure and then also chase dollars for the ongoing reoccurring expense of the service itself. But we do have that in common areas. So I think this initiative is very well received and speaks to our goal of equity throughout our portfolio.
Yeah, so when you say the infrastructure, Emily, can you define that? You mean the actual infrastructure to set up the hub to provide the internet access, or is it actual?
Sure, I can, I'll defer to Beto for all of the infrastructure as he's kind of more of the expert, but the Cat5 wire, all of the ports, et cetera.
Okay, all right. I just would suggest, Mr. Gentry, and I'm sure I could get somebody to work with me on this as a side project. There are, Verizon, Cox, both have been asked to have the focus on helping address the digital divide. We are an essential component to the housing conversation, in particular the families that are living within our units. And I think that this is one of those things where Stephanie, and I could work together because she knows all the same people that I do. I think if we can get a better idea of what you're looking at and where we can show the specifics, this is one we're going to Cox and Verizon in particular to ask them for the help and wiring some of these units would make sense. And I also think that we could submit a matching grant from the San Diego Foundation fund that they've built, and they do have digital divide as a focus. So the window is open. It's an open opportunity. I think that if you guys can come up with some suggestions of what you really need, which units, which locations, I'm sure Madam Chair and I could wrangle a little bit of support to try and make a bold move in this area, because it's highly likely that distance learning is going to be with us until the fall.
Absolutely, and perhaps beyond that, whether it has to be or not, it's the kind of thing that the modern world you've got to have.
Exactly.
And Jeff, one of the things we might look at is both the properties that we own and have direct physical control over in terms of retrofitting or enabling infrastructure, and either whether it's in each individual dwelling unit or something less than that, and working with our own people in that regard, and also working through Emily's customers on the private sector stuff that we provide funding for, to make sure that we help them see this as an essential part of their own infrastructure for their properties.
Yeah, and Mr. Gentry, I'll just say this. The reason why I'm intrigued by this and is at the beginning of COVID, we learned something at SDG&E. We have programs that are designed to help people with their utility costs. And we found out, and I will give kudos to Bridget Browning, who heads up local HERE. She had a variety of members who who don't have internet access, so they couldn't even submit the application online to the
Yeah.
United Way, actually get the support. What came to mind when I was listening to this presentation is that maybe the same case here. Some people don't even have the access to the internet to do it, let alone to fill out an application. So we are the best case study for improving the situation and access. So anything that we can do to improve the situation, we should be looking at now while there is money and a focus on this, because it's a long-term improvement.
And you make a great argument that internet access is a utility in the modern world, and it should be available automatically. So yes, sir, that's a wonderful idea. We'll look into it. Madam Chair, if I could have 2 more minutes. Let me point out too, to the newer board members in particular, we've been working on moving to work waivers, if you will, on some of the dumber federal rules and regulations that we deal with going back to 2009, the year after I got here. And as Maggie Keeley, some of the others been around for a while, can tell you, we've done some pretty audacious things with that program in terms of differentiating what we do from the mainstream of this country. Most housing agencies receive funding that is heavily controlled, highly structured, very limited. And again, if you get to some of these NARO meetings, a lot of what you hear is gnashing of teeth from agencies on how restricted they are and what they can do. We've had good freedoms here, and we've done some pretty audacious things, as I said a minute ago. And I would be glad to sit down with any of the board members, with staff, and anytime you want to talk about what we've done since we kicked this off in 2009. You go back 10 years ago, there was a lot of very basic changes we made, including that led us to get into a more direct provision of homelessness services. And I'm very glad to see that we're addressing the higher end of the range of folks we deal with now, looking at home ownership opportunities as well. But Madam Chair, thank you very much.
No, this is a great conversation. I'm happy to help, however, with connections to some of those companies, and I think leveraging the philanthropic dollars is always great. I know that our team does an admirable job there, but the Housing Commission has been so good with the moving to work money. To the extent that we can leverage any other philanthropic, please let us know how we can help from the commissioner side. One quick follow-up question. The supportive services are so critical, so glad to see that included. And you call out the digital divide, but I'm assuming that those supportive services are including but not limited to, and there's going to be a lot of flexibility as we explore what those services need to be. I think crawling out of COVID is going to work. We don't know what we don't know yet about what folks need. So there's flexibility with what that could cover.
Correct.
Great. Anything else, commissioners? Quiet group today. Okay, fantastic. You can hear this terrible show. Moving informational items, so no action required. Look forward to bringing this back. Our final item is 106, an informational workshop about the Housing Commission's first-time homebuyer programs. One of those treasures that we operate that often doesn't get ample applause. Very excited about this one. We have no public comments submitted, and we'll be hearing from the Senior Vice President of Housing Finance, Emily Jacobs, and Vice President of Single Family Housing Finance, Suhada Raman. Please forgive me if that's not correct, and please correct me. And they'll be presenting in this workshop. So please begin whenever you're ready.
Thanks, Stephanie. Good afternoon. I'm Emily Jacobs, Senior Vice President of Housing Finance and Property Management. With me today is Sujata Raman, Vice President of Single Family Housing Finance. This afternoon, we're presenting to the board details about the San Diego Housing Commission's administration of programs that help families achieve the dream of home ownership in the city of San Diego and the county of San Diego. Next slide. Our first-time homebuyer program supports an important part of the mission of the Housing Commission: to provide affordable, safe, and quality homes for low and moderate income families and individuals in the city of San Diego. The Housing Commission has helped more than 5,800 families purchase a home in the city since 1988. Next slide. In 2014, the County of San Diego approached the Housing Commission and asked us to administer their first-time homebuyer program. The Housing Commission entered into a contract with the County of San Diego, and through this partnership has helped 211 families purchase their first home in the County of San Diego. Next slide. The next few slides provide more details about the Swiss first-time homebuyers. I'll begin with the program for the City of San Diego. Eligible first-time homebuyers earning more than 80% of San Diego's area median income may qualify for a deferred payment second trust deed loan of up to 17% of the purchase price, with an interest rate set at 3%. No payments are required for 30 years unless the owner sells or no longer occupies the home as a primary residence. If either of these situations occur, the principal balance, including accrued interest, must be repaid. To qualify, the buyer must obtain a fixed-rate first trust deed loan, have adequate income and a good credit rating, and provide a minimum down payment of 3%. Applicants must also attend a homebuyer education class. The U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development sets the maximum sales price for a property the program participant can buy. The maximum price is currently just shy of $680,000 for a detached single-family home and just above $445,000 for an attached unit like a condo. Next slide. Grants to help home buyers with their closing costs are also available. Buyers earning no more than 80% of San Diego's area median income are eligible for closing cost assistance for up to 4% of the purchase price, not to exceed $10,000. These closing cost grants can be used to pay all recurring and non-recurring closing costs that are not covered by lender or seller credits. These grants for closing cost assistance are forgiven at escrow closing. The homebuyer applies for a closing cost grant in conjunction with the deferred payment loan program. Next slide. Households earning up to 100% of area median income may also apply for a standalone closing cost forgivable loan of up to 4% of the purchase price or appraised value, whichever is less. The standalone closing cost forgivable loan cannot exceed $10,000. The funds can be used to pay all reoccurring and non-reoccurring closing costs that are not covered by lender credit, seller credit, or other subsidy. The loan will be forgiven after 6 years. The same limits that HUD sets for the sale price apply to this forgivable loan. Next slide. Another option for first-time home buyers is the Mortgage Credit Certificate Program. A mortgage credit certificate increases the household income available to qualify for a mortgage by reducing the home buyer's federal tax liability. The funding for this program comes from an allocation of private activity bonds transferred by the California Debt Limit Allocation Committee to the Housing Authority of the City of San Diego. The bonds are converted to mortgage credit certificates, which are issued to individual households to assist with their home purchase. The homeowner receives a 20% federal income tax credit based on the annual interest paid on the mortgage. It is a dollar-for-dollar savings on the participant's annual federal tax liability. Homeowners earning up to 140% of area median income are eligible for this program. The Internal Revenue Service tax code sets the guidelines for income and purchase price limitations. Next slide. On this slide, you'll see an example of how the mortgage credit certificate benefits the homeowner. In this example, a one-person household with an annual income of $100,000 has a mortgage of $486,000 with a 5% interest rate. In this simplified calculation of taxes, the 20% tax credit from the mortgage credit certificate reduces the household tax liability by about $3,600. Now Sujata will provide more detail about the County of San Diego program, as well as the application process and program enhancements for both the city and county. Next slide.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Commissioners. This is Sujata. As Emily just mentioned a few slides earlier, in addition to the City of San Diego's first-time homebuyer program, the Housing Commission also administers the County of San Diego's first-time homebuyer program, known as DCCA, Down Payment and Closing Cost Assistance Program. This program serves residents of the unincorporated areas of the county, as well as the 12 cities shown on this slide. Next slide, please. The county's program is similar to the city's in that homebuyers may qualify for deferred payment loans or closing cost assistance. The county's first-time homebuyer program is designed to make funds available to low-income households to help with the purchase of a home in the County of San Diego. Eligible families may apply for a 3% interest deferred payment down payment assistance loan of up to 17% of the purchase price of the property. They may also apply for up to $10,000 in closing cost assistance. Next slide. The application process is the same for both the city and the county's first-time homebuyer program. The Housing Commission has partnered with more than 250 loan officers and 45 lenders and banks in the community. Housing Commission staff members have trained these community partners on the first-time homebuyer programs by holding several training workshops each year. Last calendar year, due to COVID and our remote working situation, we held Zoom webinars to provide the training. We encouraged them to help promote and raise awareness of the program among the real estate agents they partner with and the families they serve. Housing Commission staff also periodically conducts public outreach efforts and holds first-time homebuyer workshops at community events to promote the first-time homebuyer programs. Buyers who meet the area median income requirements and are looking to purchase a home must contact one of these loan officers to begin the application process for the first-time homebuyer program. The names and contact information for the participating loan officers are available on a participating lender list posted on the first-time homebuyers page on the Housing Commission's website at www.sdhc.org. Buyers work with the participating loan officer to get qualified and then work with the real estate agent to find a property to purchase. The loan officer collects all required documentation from the buyer and submits the application to the Housing Commission. Housing Commission staff members underwrite the loan. Upon approval, we issue loan documents for the closing and then fund the loan. Buyers are also required to attend a homebuyer education and pre-purchase counseling course from Housing Commission approved providers. Next slide. Here is an example of how the Housing Commission's down payment loan can help an eligible low-income home buyer purchase a home in San Diego. In fiscal year 2020, the average price of a home bought with help from our first-time home buyer program in the city was $366,000. For this example, let's say the home buyer purchases a home that's priced at $375,000. In this case, the buyer provides a 3% down payment of $11,250, which can actually be a gift, the 3% down payment. They obtain a first mortgage loan equal to 80% of the purchase price, or $300,000. And the home buyer qualifies for the Housing Commission's first-time home buyer deferred payment loan of up to 17% of the purchase price, or $63,750. In this scenario, a family earning $50,000 per year would qualify to buy a home in San Diego with a mortgage payment of $1,931. Next slide. The city's first-time homebuyer program is funded primarily through federal home investment partnerships program funds that HUD awards to the City of San Diego and the Housing Commission administers. Additional funding sources include federal community development block grant funds, state Cal Home program funds, and the City of San Diego Affordable Housing Funds. Federal home funds and state Cal Home funds awarded to the county are the primary sources of funding for the county's first-time homebuyer program. Next slide. In July of 2019, the Housing Commission launched a new loan underwriting platform and lender portal to accept and process applications for the first-time homebuyer program. Before the launch of these platforms, first-time homebuyer applications were submitted and processed in hard copy physical files. Now applications and all supporting documents are submitted electronically by our lender partners through the lender portal. Benefits of electronic submissions include the elimination of paper files, easy access to application documents, reduction in processing times, and a seamless transition to working remotely due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Next slide. The first-time homebuyer program's lender partners can upload the borrower profile data from their bank's loan software directly into the Housing Commission's lender portal. The portal is also designed to prevent ineligible applications or applicants who don't qualify from being submitted. Lenders have access to the portal 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, to submit new applications, download approvals, view outstanding documentation. So it's been a nice enhancement for our partners. The Manage Documents section of the portal includes organized document categories where specific supporting documents are uploaded, which are then available to Housing Commission staff for underwriting. Next slide. In the underwriting module, Housing Commission staff can easily monitor the status of all phase of processing until the loan is funded and handed off to loan servicing. Program restrictions such as income limits, sales price limits, and debt-to-income ratio requirements are built into the system. Any restriction that the borrower does not meet appears in red font, making it easy for staff to identify. Next slide. The Housing Commission staff uses workflows in the portal to ensure internal processing tasks are completed, to issue document conditions to lenders, and to ensure all closeout tasks are completed for successful handoff to loan servicing. Underwriting forms and the program's loan documents have been migrated from Excel and Word, which previously required manual entry, to the underwriting platform to allow for quick editing and easy printing. Next slide. This slide provides some high-level data about the City of San Diego's first-time homebuyer program in fiscal year 2020. The average sales price of a home where a buyer utilized the Housing Commission's first-time homebuyer assistance was $366,000. On average, the income of participating households was 67% of the area median income. So basically, even though our program allows income up to 80% of area median income, lower income households are still able to qualify for our assistance and buy homes in San Diego. The average down payment loan and closing cost assistance provided to each household was $71,600. And we helped 68 households become homeowners in fiscal year 2020. Next slide. The pie chart on this slide displays households that receive first-time homebuyer loans or grants based on the city council district where they live. 70% of the households assisted are in city council districts 4, 8, 9, and 3, in the communities of Encanto, Paradise Hills, Golden Hill, North Park, Normal Heights, City Heights, Sherman Heights, Barrio Logan, and San Ysidro, to name a few. Next slide. While the data are important to understanding the first-time homebuyer programs, the stories of the families these numbers represent demonstrate the impact of these programs. Antonio, his wife Maria, and their 2 sons lived for 15 years in a 1-bedroom, 1-bathroom apartment before they applied to the Housing Commission's first-time homebuyer program. A friend who bought a home through our program inspired them to apply. With the Housing Commission's help, this family bought a home of their own in City Heights with 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, and a spacious backyard. They said they needed the extra space for their 20-year-old son who has Down syndrome and requires round-the-clock care, and his 11-year-old brother. Antonio said he loves his neighborhood and his neighbors. Next slide. The first-time homebuyer programs are administered by the outstanding staff in the Housing Commission's Single-Family Housing Finance Department. In addition, these staff members manage loan servicing for more than 2,600 single-family home loans. This past year, the County of San Diego also awarded the Housing Commission the contract to service approximately 700 loans for the county. Housing Commission staff also administer the Affordable for Sale housing program, through which single-family homes are sold at an affordable price below market rate. This program has helped more than 400 families buy and own a home in the city of San Diego. Next slide. This concludes our presentation, and we're available for any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Sujata, and thank you, Emily. Do we have any questions or comments from our commissioners? Okay, I think there's something about an afternoon meeting that makes folks a little bit drowsier. Mr. Gentry. You're on mute.
It's seldom that I'm muted, as you know, but one word of compliment here to the staff. Sujata runs existence here for a good long while. It's not one of our biggies. This is one of our smaller programs. But if you look at the extra added value this provides to the community, it's just huge. And just to the board members, this is a good example of the best work we do, which typically does not get a lot of public attention, but I think is a backbone of this organization. Sujata does a great job. Thank you for that. And her staff as well. And I just commend it to you all.
Sure.
Mr. Mitchell.
Madam Chair, I just would say this. Mr. Gentry, I would agree that this is a program that doesn't get a lot of attention. We often hear, the phrase first-time home buyer, and there's not much detail behind it. But, so I thought this was a good report. The one thing that stood out to me on the pie chart was Sujata, that when you put the pie chart up, you see the number of how there's a glaring disparity in how the pie is divided up, and I'm assuming that the main reason is you can't find any places in District 1 in District 1, I guess it makes sense. 2 and 3 were District 2 was a little bit of a shock to me that you aren't finding more. Can you give me a little more description of it? Is it just there aren't as many opportunities in the district because?
Correct. Thank you for your question, Commissioner Mitchell. So as Emily talked about in one of the previous slides, there's a maximum sales price that's applicable for our loan programs that's set by HUD every year. In fact, San Diego, because the cost of housing is so high, we actually apply for a waiver with HUD to get our sales prices increased. Otherwise, there would be very, very few people qualifying to buy a home. So based on the maximum sales price that's allocated, certain areas become naturally affordable, and it's hard to find homes that fit under that value in other council districts. And that's why most of the homes tend to be aggregated around the few council districts.
Yeah, it just brings to mind that I know there's been headlines in the last 2 weeks about San Diego is going to see the single largest increase in housing prices in the nation, and it anticipated in 2021, which is going to make the job that you have tougher and the waiver more important. But I also would say that what the pie chart shows is that we're building more new housing, as evidenced by the presentations today. Spreading those new housing projects around are going to be essential. And obviously, the first-time housing program, first-time buyer program doesn't work in D1 or D2. hopefully we'll see projects from the developers that are coming in that are spreading around the construction of new housing by district. And I haven't ever seen that chart, but I'm assuming, Mr. Gentry, that you guys could create a pie chart that shows in the last 5 years where the new housing construction for affordable units by district is being built. I'd like to see that pie chart.
We could do that. And I'll point out that we still have to follow the money. And we have to make sure that the first time a home buyer does not bite off more than he or she can chew, and that it works. And one number I did not see in the report that I have to commend staff on, the failure rate on this program, the last time I looked at the numbers, Sujata, was less than 1/4% or something like that. It's minuscule. Correct. There are seldom, and typically it's death, divorce, or something like that. And we will recycle there as we can, but the failure rate is just minuscule because it doesn't help families to buy a house they can't afford.
Yep.
And so we have to back in not only to the price of the house, but the ability of the family to pay. And this is not a program where we cover all the costs. And it's not a program where we help somebody buy a house where they've got maybe other issues in their lives to deal with first.
Sure.
These are families who are stable, on the verge of being able to acquire a house with a little help, and we give them that little bit of help, and that makes for a successful program. And the failure rate again is minuscule.
Yeah, I will commend you on that one. And one thing I'd add, and Madam Chair knows this, there's such a focus on the climate action plan. San Diego has to come to grips with, instead of having people move to Riverside County and then commute back to San Diego to go to work, which has been the trend for the last decade. When I was at the chamber, 37% of Murrieta and Temecula were driving south to San Diego to go to work every day. It's getting worse, right? And I think that so this first-time homebuyer program is a great addition. Housing prices are continuous, and I'm glad that the failure rate is minuscule. And we just have to hopefully find more opportunities so people can actually live closer to where they work and not be driving up and down the freeway.
Mr. Gentry, if I can add, you're absolutely right. The credit profile of these borrowers is excellent. Our average credit score is 730. So these homeowners are working for many years to get almost perfect credit. They have very little debt, and all of that contributes to a very safe program. These loans are paid off, and the rate of default is extremely low.
And it also helps with our credibility with the local bankers. They understand that we're not going to bring somebody to them who's going to cause them heartburn later on. And that's not a small issue either.
Thank you. That's all really helpful information. I mean, I knew that this program was very successful. I'm always pleased to have these presentations. I'm glad that we're able to stay competitive, especially as, there's not a ton of supply. I'm sure the units or the homes that y'all are helping folks go after are probably in high demand with multiple offers. No easy way to get through this process. So, and I've actually gotten an email or two from a person looking for somebody, and it's been interesting. And I've always been so impressed by how this program is operated. So this is an information item. We don't have a vote required, but if there's any other follow-up questions or comments from the commissioners, jump in now. Okay, or don't. Also fine. Ending on a high note. That's fantastic. We are able to adjourn now at 2:50, unless we have any closing comments. Don't see any. Okay, at 2:51, this meeting is adjourned. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you all.
Thank you.